In the early 18th century, the American colonies were growing rapidly, attracting people from various parts of Europe, including the Scots-Irish and Germans. African slaves were forcibly brought to the colonies, fueling labor needs, especially in the South. Each region developed distinct characteristics. New England focused on industry and trade. The Middle colonies boasted diverse farming communities, and the Southern colonies relied heavily on large plantations run by enslaved labor. Colonial society became layered, with wealthy landowners at the top, a growing class of artisans and small farmers in the middle, and indentured servants and enslaved Africans at the bottom. Amid these social structures, a powerful religious movement swept through the colonies, the First Great Awakening. Fiery preachers like Jonathan Edwards with his sermon Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, and George Whitefield brought emotional preaching to congregations across the colonies. This movement helped loosen the grip of established churches and encourage the formation of new denominations, such as the Baptists and Methodists. At the same time, the Enlightenment's ideas of reason, science, and natural rights were spreading. John Locke's philosophy of life, liberty, and property became highly influential, and Benjamin Franklin embodied Enlightenment ideals with his scientific experiments and writings. Economically, the colonies operated under British mercantilist policies, designed to benefit the mother country. The Navigation Acts restricted colonial trade, but smuggling was widespread. Despite these restrictions, regional economies thrived, with New England focusing on shipbuilding and trade, the South growing cash crops like tobacco and rice, and the Middle colonies acting as a breadbasket with their abundant grain production. Then came the French and Indian War, 1754 to 1763, which pitted British and colonial forces against the French and their Native American allies. Although Britain emerged victorious, the war was costly, leaving the empire with massive debts. To recover, Britain imposed new taxes on the colonies, such as the Sugar Act, Stamp Act, and Townshend Acts. These taxes sparked colonial outrage, as many believed they should not be taxed without representation in Parliament. Colonial resistance grew, with events like the Boston Massacre and the Boston Tea Party fanning the flames of dissent. In response to colonial defiance, Britain imposed the Intolerable Acts, which further united the colonies against what they saw as oppressive rule. As tensions rose, colonial leaders gathered for the First and Second Continental Congresses. They drew on Enlightenment principles, with Thomas Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense, arguing that the colonies should seek independence. Finally, in 1776, Thomas Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence, asserting that all men are created equal with rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Revolutionary War erupted, with pivotal battles at Lexington and Concord, Saratoga, and Yorktown. The French alliance proved crucial, and in 1783, the Treaty of Paris formally ended the war, recognizing American independence. The war transformed society, bringing new opportunities and challenges. Women took on roles in households and in some cases businesses, with the idea of Republican motherhood emerging to emphasize women's role in raising informed citizens. Northern states began to gradually abolish slavery, though it persisted in the South. Native Americans, however, found themselves further marginalized as Americans expanded westward. The fledgling nation initially governed under the Articles of Confederation, a document that deliberately limited central authority. Without the power to tax or regulate trade effectively, the government struggled. Economic hardships culminated in Shays' Rebellion, where frustrated farmers in Massachusetts protested debt and high taxes. It became clear that a stronger government was needed. In 1787, the Constitutional Convention met to draft a new framework for governance. Leaders like James Madison and Alexander Hamilton negotiated key compromises, including the Great Compromise, balancing representation for large and small states, and the Three-Fifths Compromise, counting enslaved people as 3/5 of a person for representation. The Constitution established a system of federalism and a government of separated powers with checks and balances. Federalists, who supported the Constitution, and anti-federalists, who feared a strong central government, debated fiercely until the Bill of Rights was added to protect individual liberties. George Washington became the first president, setting important precedents such as the formation of a cabinet and signing the Judiciary Act of 1789, which established the federal court system. Washington's administration focused on consolidating the new nation's finances under Alexander Hamilton's financial plan, which included the creation of a national bank, assumption of state debts, and tariffs to encourage domestic industry. Washington also navigated foreign policy challenges, like issuing the Neutrality Proclamation to avoid involvement in European conflicts and negotiating Jay's Treaty to resolve lingering issues with Britain. As John Adams took office, tensions with France escalated into the XYZ affair, where French diplomats demanded bribes from American envoys, stirring anti-French sentiment. The Federalist-controlled Congress responded with the Alien and Sedition Acts, aiming to limit criticism of the government and restrict immigrant influence. In opposition, Jefferson and Madison authored the Virginia and Kentucky Resolutions, asserting states' rights to challenge federal laws. The election of 1800, in which Thomas Jefferson won over Adams, marked the first peaceful transfer of power between political parties, a significant moment in the young republic's history. Jefferson prioritized reducing federal power, repealing the Alien and Sedition Acts, and fostering an agrarian society. His administration made the bold Louisiana Purchase in 1803, doubling the size of the United States and leading to the Lewis and Clark Expedition, which mapped much of the newly acquired territory. Meanwhile, the judiciary, under Chief Justice John Marshall, established key precedents that strengthened federal authority. In Marbury v. Madison, the court asserted the power of judicial review, allowing it to strike down unconstitutional laws. Other cases, like McCulloch v. Maryland and Gibbons v. Ogden, reinforced the supremacy of federal law over state laws. Jefferson's presidency faced foreign policy challenges, including conflicts with the Barbary pirates and British impressment of American sailors, leading to the Embargo Act of 1807. Although intended to protect American interests, the embargo hurt the economy, especially in New England. James Madison, who succeeded Jefferson, presided over the War of 1812, which was fueled by Britain's maritime policies and support for Native American resistance. The war saw key events like the burning of Washington, D.C., but it concluded with the Treaty of Ghent in 1814. The Battle of New Orleans, fought after the treaty, boosted American morale and nationalism. As the war ended, the era of good feelings began under James Monroe's presidency. This period was marked by a sense of national unity, although economic and sectional differences persisted. Henry Clay's American system sought to strengthen the economy with a protective tariff, a national bank, and funding for internal improvements. However, the Panic of 1819 revealed economic vulnerabilities, and regional disputes intensified over issues like tariffs and slavery. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 addressed the sectional conflict over the expansion of slavery, admitting Missouri as a slave state and Maine as a free state, while setting a line at 36 degrees 30 minutes to limit slavery in future territories. Monroe's foreign policy initiatives included the Monroe Doctrine, a declaration that the Western Hemisphere was off-limits to European intervention, establishing a key precedent for U.S. foreign policy. Culturally, this period also saw a rise in distinctly American art, literature, and education. Writers, artists, and educators sought to create a unique American identity, with public education expanding and newspapers proliferating, boosting literacy and fostering informed citizens. And so, through a journey of wars, compromise, ideals, and the vision of its leaders, the young United States grew from a collection of colonies into a nation, its identity forged through conflict, compromise, and a commitment to the principles laid down in the Constitution. These early decades set the foundation for the expansion, challenges, and transformations that would continue to shape the American story.